The final stylistic element related to film form that we're going to be examining is movie sound. As the reading for this week points out, sound tends to be a part of films that we often take for granted, but it is every bit as integral to movies, both in terms of storytelling and in terms of film art, as mise-en-scène, cinematography, and editing. And, just as with all the other stylistic elements of film form, movie sound has more than just practical uses. In other words, decisions about what sounds we hear in movies, when we hear them, and how they sound on the movie soundtrack are always about more than just allowing the audience to clearly understand what characters are saying. Movie sound, too, has an intentional design that is planned to the tiniest detail, and that uses all of the sounds that we hear on the movie soundtrack to provide story information, to provide subjective narration, to communicate implicit meaning, and for artistic purposes, often all at the same time. In everyday speech, when we talk about movie soundtracks, often what we are referring to is a recorded collection of the music used in a particular movie that we can purchase separately from the movie, either to download or to stream. But the term soundtrack has a different meaning when it comes to both film form and to filmmaking. In film terms, a movie soundtrack refers to and is made up of all of the sounds that are recorded, mixed together, and edited into the movie. And because of that, a movie soundtrack includes more types of sound than just the music used in the movie. In fact, movie soundtracks are made up of 4 different sound elements: dialogue, music, sound effects, and silence. All movies use all 4 of these sound elements, and all movies generally use more than one of them at any time in any given scene. On analog celluloid film strips, the soundtrack is a magnetic strip that runs alongside the image track and onto which sound is recorded. In digital filmmaking, the soundtrack is a digital file that is added to the image track. In both cases, most movie sound, including character dialogue, is recorded separately from the image track and synchronized with it in post-production. And, as you can see from the different sound files that make up this one scene, in most movies, every shot in every scene includes some combination of sound elements that are mixed together and layered in the final cut of the film. As the reading for this week discusses, there are several different sound techniques that are used in movies to present the audio content of the movie to audiences. These techniques are used for all 4 sound elements, so dialogue, music, sound effects, and silence. In general, these techniques can be divided into those that are used to represent sound and to present it to audiences, based on the relationship between the sound source and the diegesis. In other words, whether the sound comes from a source that exists inside or outside the world of the film. When it comes to diegetic sound, there are also different kinds of diegetic sound, depending on if the source of the sound is pictured on screen or if the sound comes from a source that is located off screen. There are also movie sound techniques that are used specifically to provide subjective narration, which are known as subjective sound techniques. Here, too, there are some techniques that have more than one type. A sound flashback, for example, is a kind of internal diegetic sound, but one that specifically represents a memory recalled by a character, rather than other types of internal diegetic sound that just portray characters' thoughts via voiceover narration. And there are some sound techniques that are commonly used in movies, but that don't necessarily fit into any kind of specialized category in terms of how they are used. We are going to be going over each of these techniques in more detail in class this week, and we'll also take a look at some examples so that you can get a concrete idea of what they all actually sound like.
For now, we're going to focus instead on considering how sound elements in movies are used to aid in storytelling, how they can be used for symbolic purposes or artistic purposes, and how movie sound impacts movie interpretation. This is going to be the subject of our next 2 videos.